Welcome to the AT Center at TCNJ. My name is Vanessa Lombardo, and we are excited to bring you this AAC webinar series. Our fifth session is titled Types of AAC and How to Acquire Them. This webinar is presented by Sarah Brown, a New Jersey licensed and ASHA certified speech language pathologist specializing in augmentative and alternative communication. These webinars are made possible through our partnership with the New Jersey Department of Education, Office of Special Education. The statements issued by our guest presenters do not reflect the stance of the NJDOE OSE. Please use your professional judgment when implementing strategies and resources within your practice. To learn more about the professional development opportunities offered by the AT Center at TCNJ, please visit us at atcenter.tcnj.edu.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to Types of AAC and How to Acquire It. My name is Sarah Brown, and I will be presenting tonight.
Farmers living in a nation governed by a government of national unity that
So welcome. If you are not new to these webinars, you already know what to do, but I always like to start my presentations by getting to know who is in the audience. So please help me get to know you. In the chat, if you could tell me your name, where you're from, and what brings you here tonight. And I believe I am not sharing my screen, so let me go ahead and do that right now. There we go. Okay, Abby, SLP Chicago, NJ Sped, Dorothy, welcome. Let's see who else we have here. Let me open up the chat. Okay, Kelly, SLP, Bergen County, New Jersey, SLP, school and private, wonderful. Okay, awesome, wonderful. Thank you guys so much for being here. Okay, so now that I've gotten to know more about all of you, I'd like to introduce myself and share more about my background before we get started. So I am a dually licensed speech language pathologist. I'm able to practice in New Jersey and North Carolina. I actually recently relocated to the Charlotte area. I am certified by the American Speech Language and Hearing Association, and I presented statewide on AAC. I'm a member of the New Jersey Speech Language and Hearing Association, as well as the North Carolina Speech Language and Hearing Association. And I served as the chair for the Interprofessional Autism Committee for the New Jersey Speech Language and Hearing Association. I've practiced in a variety of settings, including early intervention, public and private schools, higher education, as well as private practice, where I'm currently at right now. And my areas of interest include AAC, of course, autism, sensory integration and processing, early language development, and neurodiversity affirming therapy. And on a more personal note, my husband and I are expecting our first baby very soon, the first week of June. So I'm looking forward to the future and speaking not only from a professional standpoint, but from a parent perspective as well. So as a result of this webinar, participants will be able to define AAC, who uses it and why, describe advantages and disadvantages of unaided and aided AAC, and become familiar with various AAC funding and acquisition pathways. So just a quick but important note on language and terminology. During this presentation, you may hear the term AAC user based on feedback from AAC users that this is a preferred term. Non-speaking or minimally speaking instead of nonverbal. The term nonverbal can have a negative connotation and may imply a lack of language or ability to understand. AAC device or AAC system will be used instead of talker based on feedback from AAC users that this is also a preferred term. And generally, when speaking to a group or presenting, I will defer to using identity first language based on the preferences of many autistic adults, meaning saying autistic person instead of person with autism. But when working one-on-one with students or their families, I will ask what they prefer. So when in doubt, it never hurts to ask. Language matters and shapes perceptions. Terminology is constantly changing, and it's important that we listen to and include the opinions of people with lived experience. So what is AAC? AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. It refers to tools and strategies that can enhance speech or provide a completely different means of communication. It falls under the broader umbrella of assistive technology, or the use of equipment, tools, and strategies to improve functional daily living in people with various disabilities and limitations. Augmentative means to supplement or add to someone's speech, so it includes things that can make your message more clear to a listener, such as using facial expressions or gestures. Alternative means instead of, so it includes things that replace spoken language, such as a dedicated communication device, which can only be used for communication purposes, or an iPad with a communication app. This is when we have an iPad that can be used for many different things in addition to communication purposes. Most often, when people think of AAC, the image of a non-speaker comes to mind, but we can't forget that it's also for adding to existing speech. AAC can be very flexible because communication needs are very different from person to person. Some people use AAC all day and every day, while others only use it in certain situations. So for those of you that have already attended any of the previous webinars, this will be a little bit of a review, but I want to make sure to explain what unaided and aided AAC is as a foundation for anyone attending for the first time tonight. So AAC is generally broken down into two categories known as aided and unaided AAC. Under the unaided category, it's also known as no tech. It does not require any external tool. It is communication done solely with the body. For example, gestures, facial expressions, sign language, body language, etc. And for aided AAC, we have light tech, mid tech, and high tech. It is communication methods that require external tools or devices. For example, core boards, eye gaze boards, iPads, and tablets with communication apps, or a dedicated communication device. And so here are some different visual examples within each category. So under unaided AAC, as I previously mentioned, this includes forms of communication that only require the body and no external means. For example, sign language, facial expressions, pointing, and body language. Under light tech, these are paper-based tools to support communication. Even though they are paper-based, they are considered light tech because they still required some technology to create them, such as a printer. Some examples I have here are an alphabet board, PECS, which stands for a Picture Exchange Communication System, and printed visuals for a choice board. Since we are talking about types of AAC tonight, I wanted to include PECS to note that it is not a form of light tech that I would recommend for several reasons. One being that PECS was originally designed to teach functional requesting and does not support a full range of communication functions, such as commenting, asking and answering questions, or social exchanges. It begins with physical prompts and is centered around external reinforcement. It also does not support motor planning and does not inherently support language growth the way that more robust AAC systems or even other light tech systems can. If you have additional questions or concerns about this, please feel free to ask them during the Q&A portion. So moving on to mid-tech, we have examples such as an 8-button AAC, a Big Mac which produces a single message, and a 2-button AAC. When we think of mid-tech communication systems, they are battery operated and require a recorded voice. Typically, they have a single overlay or static display, which means that all the symbols are constantly displayed on the device. The last category is high-tech AAC, and high-tech AAC refers to tools with higher processing capabilities and synthesized speech. Synthesized speech allows users to create messages in the moment instead of relying on a pre-recorded message. It includes a dedicated device, which can only be used for the purpose of communication, and iPads or tablets with the communication app installed. An AAC user that has a communication app on an iPad is still able to use that iPad for other purposes beyond communication. An AAC system can include all types of AAC and should be individualized based on the strengths and support needs of each child or adult. One thing that's important to note is that there is no hierarchy when it comes to any AAC. Light tech is actually also referred to as low tech, but as a field, we are shifting away from low to light because many people assume low tech is associated with low functioning, which couldn't be further from the truth. AAC is a powerful tool that can open up communication and support language development for individuals with various communication needs. However, every form of AAC, whether it's high-tech devices, communication boards, or gestures, has its own limitations. No single method works perfectly in every situation. That's why a total communication approach, which encourages the use of multiple modes like speech, signs, symbols, and technology together, is recommended. It gives individuals the flexibility to communicate in a way that works best for them across different environments and situations. So just some examples of populations that may benefit from AAC. AAC can benefit anyone who has difficulty with spoken language or spoken communication. This includes individuals of all ages and with a wide range of abilities or diagnoses. For example, children and adults with developmental disabilities, acquired disorders, progressive neurological conditions, and individuals with temporary communication needs. It's important to note that a diagnosis alone does not automatically mean that an individual needs AAC. Similarly, just because a person can speak does not mean that they would not benefit from AAC. So since we're talking about acquiring AAC and various types tonight, I thought it would be valuable to revisit the roles and responsibilities of SLPs. On this slide, you will see the combined responsibilities for both medical and school-based SLPs directly from ASHA, which is the American Speech Language and Hearing Association, for those attending tonight that are not SLPs. This is not an exhaustive list, but a general outline of our role and responsibilities. ASHA also indicates in their code of ethics that SLPs shall engage in only those aspects of the profession that are within the scope of their professional practice and competence, considering their level of education, training, and experience. If you are an SLP and feel that you have inadequate experience or training in AAC, at minimum, ASHA suggests that you consult with an SLP experienced in AAC. Buchelman and Light 2020 estimated that approximately 5 million Americans and 97 million people in the world may benefit from AAC. I don't know about you, but I have seen my AAC caseload significantly grow and have come across many older students that I felt should have been introduced to AAC that haven't been. So please keep these roles in mind. It's not enough to think that another SLP will introduce AAC, or if you've attended my previous webinars, I have discussed that viewing AAC as a last resort is an incredibly harmful myth. There is such a need for AAC with a variety of individuals of all ages. I appreciate you all being here tonight because ongoing professional development helps bridge the gap in access to AAC. Hopefully you leave here tonight feeling more confident in types of AAC and the funding process that many find intimidating. So types of AAC, no tech. So what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of no tech AAC? So starting with the advantages, no tech AAC is free, always available because it is communication done solely with the body and does not require external tools. This also makes it more naturalistic because we all use various forms of unaided AAC throughout the day. Some disadvantages: gestures, body language, and signs are not always understood by others and do not always convey the full message. There are also motor demands associated, which may be difficult for some individuals with physical disabilities or reduced fine motor control or who fatigue easily. So moving on to light tech. Light tech AAC options, such as an alphabet and communication board, are generally inexpensive. Core boards are often laminated, which makes them more durable so that you do not have to print out a new board each day. There is a variety of options for light tech AAC, including core boards, eye gaze boards, visuals, pragmatic organization dynamic display, also known as POD, etc. So light tech AAC can be used across environments because they don't rely on Wi-Fi or electricity. As I mentioned previously, they can be laminated, which makes them more durable and appropriate for messy activities or water play. If lost or damaged, materials can quickly be reprinted. Backup copies can be made and kept at home and at school. Some disadvantages: besides POD, many light tech AAC systems lack the vocabulary depth or flexibility needed for novel sentence generation or advanced conversation. There is no voice output, so AAC users must rely on communication partners to interpret symbols. There's also no auditory feedback, which can reduce the communicative impact or engagement for some AAC users, especially in group settings. And lastly, light tech AAC can be time consuming. Customizing core boards and replacing damaged or lost materials takes time to reproduce. So moving on to mid-tech, some advantages of mid-tech AAC. There are a variety of options. So mid-tech AAC includes devices like single message voice output buttons or multi-message devices with levels. These systems allow for customization of vocabulary, message sequencing, and can support different communication functions depending on a user's needs. Most forms of mid-tech AAC are portable and can be used across environments such as home, school, or community settings. Voice output allows for the user's message to be audible to communication partners, which promotes interaction and independence. And many mid-tech devices include visual symbols or overlays with printed words, supporting symbol recognition and literacy skills. So some disadvantages of mid-tech AAC: it is not robust. Mid-tech systems have limited vocabulary capacity and lack dynamic features like grammar support or word prediction. They don't allow for spontaneous generation of novel sentences, and users are often restricted to pre-recorded messages in set categories. So programming individual messages and creating symbol overlays or templates can require significant planning and time, especially when updating vocabulary for new lessons or events. There's also a reliance on communication partners. Users may need support operating the device, such as turning it on, navigating levels, swapping overlays, etc. And finally, the cost varies. Mid-tech AAC can range in price from affordable single message tools to several $100s for more advanced models. Costs to keep in mind is not only the device itself, but maintenance, batteries, overlays, and sometimes software for customization. So I'm currently working primarily with students using high-tech devices, but wanted to show some additional real-life examples of light and mid-tech AAC used in the classroom. A friend of mine who's also an AAC specialist teacher was kind enough to share some other forms of AAC she's using in the classroom. I love how she incorporated puppets and pretend play with core communication boards. In the second photo, there is a great example of mid-tech AAC used to participate in morning meeting. She also added some additional symbols on top to discuss the day of the week, month, and weather. And in the last photo, this is a great example of AAC being used to support transitions and time. Using a timer can be a wonderful tool for your therapy sessions at home or in the classroom. Time can be a very abstract concept for some of our students, so I love how she incorporated visuals to support a more concrete understanding. Now moving on to high-tech AAC, so some advantages are robust language. So high-tech AAC systems allow users to access core and fringe vocabulary, generate novel sentences, use morphology, syntax, and pragmatics more fully. These systems support language development over time, not just basic communication needs. High-tech systems provide a variety of options to individualize. Vocabulary, grid size, colors, voice, access methods, and button layout can all be customized, which ensures that the AAC system can grow with the user and adapt to changing needs. High-tech AAC can be used across most environments, such as home, school, work, and out in the community. High-tech AAC also supports literacy development with features such as text-to-speech, visual pairing of symbols and words, keyboard options, word prediction, and spelling correction. And finally, dynamic systems allow users to navigate, create spontaneous messages, and explore language with less reliance on others. So some disadvantages: high-tech AAC can be very expensive depending on the brand, features, hardware, insurance, or funding availability. Ongoing costs may include repairs, software, updates, accessories, and mounts. High-tech AAC does require time to program and personalize, and customizing vocabulary, creating new pages, and entering personal information takes time and expertise. High-tech AAC systems may also have a steeper learning curve than light or mid-tech, because AAC users need time and modeling to learn how to navigate, understand symbol location, and develop a motor plan. And lastly, high-tech AAC is not appropriate for all settings, such as near the water, some outdoor or sandy environments. So here are just a few examples of high-tech AAC in action during a few of my sessions. I have pushed in during SNAC to support communication and social skills. And in the second example, this is a photo of a shared reading activity with my student. We started with fringe vocabulary and used words such as a cover of the book, author, pages, etc. It's difficult to see, but we also used a whiteboard and a Venn diagram to support vocabulary we found in the book. Our subject was pets, and she used her device to navigate to the pets folder, as well as describing words. And in the last photo, we completed a thematic activity during the month of October. We created little monsters and used AAC to label body parts. So when we talk about acquiring a high-tech AAC device, we need to discuss two components, which are the evaluation and funding components. An AAC evaluation is needed not only to receive funding, but also to determine the most appropriate device for the child or adult. If you are a speech therapist, this is within our scope of practice to be writing AAC evaluations. As I briefly mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, it is part of our roles and responsibilities. So while this presentation does not go into report writing and evaluations in depth, I do hope you leave here tonight feeling more confident in your knowledge on the evaluation process and various avenues to acquire a high-tech AAC. So the first step in the evaluation process is assessing current communication and needs. This is something all SLPs do with any of their students and clients. We have to get a baseline and see what communication functions the client is using, in what setting and with whom. Are they able to express wants and needs only with certain communication partners, or do they need part-time AAC or cannot speak at all? On an upcoming slide, I will discuss the SET framework that is helpful when assessing current communication and needs. Another step in the evaluation process is feature matching. So feature matching is a very important part of the evaluation process, and this refers to systematically comparing specific features of AAC with the individual needs, strengths, and preferences of the AAC user. In feature matching, we consider the hardware. So do we need a dedicated communication device with a durable case, or can we use an iPad and a regular case from Amazon? We also want to look at accessibility. How is the student going to access the device? With direct touch, scanning, eye gaze, etc. We want to look at the language layout that best fits a child's needs, and this is something we will discuss more when I review different features of apps in the next few slides. We also want to consider grid size and make sure we are not limiting AAC users and considering future language growth. Additional features to consider are the symbol set. Each system has different symbols that they use. Maybe the student is more familiar with certain symbols that are being used in the classroom, and that resonates more with them. So the next stage in the evaluation process is trialing devices. For insurance purposes, we do need to consider at least 3 systems, but approaches may vary by area and billing criteria. There is no one set or standard way or specific time frame to trial devices. It really depends on the parameters of your work setting and the student. Some different ideas that I've done before, I've spread it out over a week or a month. I've trialed different systems in one session. Sometimes you can't trial during a session and need to schedule a separate evaluation day. So trialing really can vary, and there is a lot of flexibility here. So next, we want to collect data. Oftentimes when we think of data, we are recording right or wrong, or did the student interact with the device? Did they navigate? Did they select an icon? If a student does this during a trial period, that's wonderful, but there are additional ways to take data that don't involve them touching the device. What is their level of engagement when you're modeling? Did they smile? Did they look at you or the device, or pause So did they pause when they were doing, what were they doing when you were modeling a word? So maybe they didn't acknowledge the device at all, but when you modeled the word go, they walked towards the door. So just remember that you absolutely can take data, even if the student is not physically engaging with the device. Something else that we want to take note of is if they're exploring the device. And this can often be seen as non-functional use of an AAC system, but it is very functional and can tell us what the child is if they're able to navigate, or maybe we know a word that piqued their interest. When selecting a device, if a child hasn't shown a certain preference, it's important to gain insight from communication partners and include them in this decision. A teacher or parent may feel more comfortable using a certain program over another, and if a child has not shown a clear preference, I absolutely will consider this because we need that buy-in from caregivers. And lastly, for funding, generally there are 3 main options. The first being insurance. So AAC can be funded by Medicaid, Medicare, commercial insurance, and military insurance. When going the insurance route, you will need to submit an evaluation, a certificate of medical necessity, and additional paperwork that can vary by state. I want to make note that insurance companies will only approve dedicated devices. If you have a family that is choosing to pay privately and you're purchasing an app, I do recommend implementing core boards and light tech while you're waiting. Twice a year, many apps go on sale. They go 50% off during Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month in April, and in October for AAC Awareness Month. So if I'm close to those months, I will suggest this as an option for families. And the last category of funding that I have here is using the community as a resource. I've participated in GoFundMe for AAC devices, bake sales, asking restaurants to donate certain portions of their proceeds on a designated night to fund a device for a student, as a few ideas. If your county or state has a board of developmental disabilities, sometimes they will provide funds to those involved to cover costs for something such as an AAC device. There are also nonprofit organizations that offer scholarships, and even though school districts typically only provide devices for the school setting, I do encourage that you reach out to see what available resources, if any, that they may be able to offer. So AAC evaluation report components. These components are typically required to be documented in an AAC evaluation report. Medicare and most funding sources follow these guidelines, so this is a good slide to refer to make sure your report has the necessary components for AAC evaluation reports. I would also like to note that AAC evaluations typically are dynamic, meaning they are flexible and interactive. They allow for prompts and supports and show learning potential. AAC assessments typically do not rely on formal standardized test scores that we typically use when evaluating speech and language for children who use spoken language as their primary method of communication. This is because standardized tests do not allow accommodations. However, if a student or client is not able to point to pictures, give a spoken response, or sit through an entire test, we have to adapt how the test is administered. When we adapt test materials, we lose the ability to use the normative data. Instead, observational methods across contexts, language sampling, informal tools, caregiver and teacher interviews, and dynamic assessment are used. Additionally, standardized tests oftentimes underestimate an AAC user's true abilities because they have no way to show what they know. It's important to keep this in mind that without a reliable means of communication, it's very difficult to demonstrate potential. So I mentioned previously that one of the ways we can assess current communication needs is by using the SET framework. This framework was designed by Dr. Joy Zabala to guide collaborative decision-making and the selection and implementation of assistive technology. It is particularly useful in AAC assessment because it promotes a holistic, student-centered approach by considering multiple factors that influence success. So SET stands for Student, Environment, Task, and Tools. It primarily was developed for the school-age population, but I have also used it for younger children as well as adults by just replacing the student piece. So going through each letter, starting with S, as I mentioned, stands for student. So the focus is on the individual's strengths and needs, current communication abilities, motor, sensory, cognitive, and language skills, preferences, and interests. This component is helpful because it ensures the AAC system fits the individual's current level and future growth and aligns with their learning profile. So moving on to E for environment, it looks at physical and social settings such as home, school, the community, communication partners, opportunities and barriers to communication. So this component ensures that the AAC system works across contexts and the partners are trained, which is critical to AAC success. The next slide that we have here is T for task, and it considers what the student needs to do in each environment, communication demands for participation, academic and social expectations. This helps identify real-life communication needs so the AAC system can be tailored to support meaningful participation. And the last T is for tools. So we have light, mid, and high-tech AAC, communication boards, apps, devices with voice output, access methods such as direct touch, switch, scanning, eye gaze, partner-assisted scanning, etc., support strategies and training, as well as accommodations and modifications. So in order to develop an appropriate system of tools, communication partners must first develop a shared understanding of the student, the environment in which the student spends time, and the tasks that are required for the student to be an active participant in the teaching and learning processes that lead to educational success. So now I'm going to talk about some advantages and disadvantages of different funding options available. So advantages of going through the insurance route for a dedicated device. They come with a warranty, often ranging from 1 to 5 years, with an option to extend coverage. When going through insurance and working with various device companies, you receive tech support, training and SLPs working with the individual, also receives support. The paperwork process for device companies is pretty streamlined, and they walk you through every step and will even provide support and advice if a device gets denied or deferred. And some disadvantages: going through insurance can take months between when you start the process and actually receive the device. Insurance only covers high-tech devices, so if you were looking for mid-tech or other forms of AAC, this would not be the route I would suggest. Costs can still be a factor even with insurance. Dedicated devices are very expensive. We're talking thousands of dollars. So depending on your insurance, this may be covered completely or partially. So cost is a disadvantage depending on what your insurance covers. And finally, I think a major barrier to this process is the time commitment it requires of SLPs. We have large caseloads and no or very limited time built in to be going back and forth with insurance. So next we have self-pay. So some advantages of self-pay: it's a quick process. You don't have to go back and forth with insurance. You can just order the device directly and receive it right away. It requires minimal to no paperwork. You as the SLP just need to have record of an AAC eval on file, but you don't need to submit any paperwork to insurance or fill out additional forms. With self-pay, you can purchase any form of AAC and are not limited to only high tech. And an additional advantage that has been very helpful for the families that I've worked with is the ability to do family sharing. I believe you can share apps on up to 5 devices, so this is very beneficial for carryover in case a certain device gets left at home, breaks, or isn't charged. I have also had families provide me access to a copy so that I'm able to model on my own device and program or work on their device without taking away access for a weekend or however long I need for programming purposes. And moving on to disadvantages, the family is paying out of pocket, so this is a financial investment. Besides AppleCare for the iPad, the language system or app you choose does not have a warranty, and generally you're limited in the direct support you can get from a company where you purchase the language system. And as for the cost, an iPad typically costs around $350. I've seen families get used ones or grabbed ones that they had already lying around the house. You don't need to get the newest fancy models, just a standard iPad will do, and that runs around $300 to $350. Communication apps, depending on the one selected, can run between $50 to $300. TD Snap is a subscription-based app and costs $9.99 per month. And apps such as TouchChat HD with WordPower are at that $300 mark. A case or screen protector can be purchased on Amazon between $15 to $30. So self-pay for an iPad with a communication app and a case, you're looking at spending between $600 to $700 if you're buying an iPad new without any sales. And then the last funding that we're going to talk about tonight is community funding. So some advantages of community funding: crowdfunding platforms or community grants can provide funds faster than waiting for insurance approvals. Campaigns often educate others about AAC, which can foster a greater community understanding and support. Funds raised through the community typically are unrestricted, allowing families to purchase the most appropriate device and case or additional accessories. And for families that do not have insurance or who are denied, community funding provides another avenue to ensure access to AAC is still received. So moving on to disadvantages or limitations of community funding. Crowdfunding campaigns are unpredictable, and there's no guarantee that the funding goal will be met. If going through a grant or scholarship, there's likely specific parameters, and they will dictate what they will and will not cover. And while community support may cover the initial costs, it typically does not provide or ensure funding for future needs, such as repairs, software updates, or training. So one of the first steps in obtaining a speech generating device is to call your insurance company to verify that your insurance policy includes coverage for a speech generating device. The policy holder or authorized family member is the best individual to make this call. If an SGD is not a covered benefit under your specific plan, it is helpful to know this before you start the funding process. And if you find that your plan does not include coverage, a local consultant can help guide you with alternative options. At the end of this webinar, I have a resources page with the direct links to consultants from various companies. So make sure to have these components handy when calling insurance to verify benefits. So for state and local resources, state lending libraries allow SLPs to borrow Switch toys for therapy and AAC devices for trials. Specific to New Jersey, the Technology Lending Center is a free service for New Jersey residents. Anyone, including a person with a disability, family members, and an education who would like to trial assistive technology can contact the Technology Learning Center, sign up for free, and begin borrowing right away. The Assistive Technology Center offers AAC evals and device trials before purchasing. They also provide workshops and trainings to schools, parents, and employers to learn about what kinds of technology are available and how to implement in various settings. On their website, you can plug in the manufacturer section, such as school or learning for home or for living, or even for AAC evals. You can also put in the specific category you're looking for, such as hearing, mobility, seating, and positioning, and speech and communication, just to list a few things. So lastly, you can get very specific by putting in a subcategory with options such as switches, buttons, joysticks, dynamic display AAC, or single message AAC. So of course, this is also this is a lot of information that may be overwhelming. So you can always call or email and they will provide you with suggestions. And then just a little plug for the College of New Jersey's AT Center. They are also a wonderful resource and offer professional development opportunities, interactive workshops, both in person and virtual, online office hours, and AT evaluations, as well as augmentative communication evaluations. All of the professional learning opportunities, such as the one we're doing tonight, are free through generous funding from the New Jersey Department of Education, Office of Special Education. I do have a resources page coming up on the next few slides, but I encourage you to check out the resources tab on the TCNJ Assistive Technology Center website, where you'll find helpful downloads, nationwide AT resources, as well as resources specific to New Jersey. So many SLPs are not aware that they can get free apps for trialing through partner programs, TD Snap being one of them. So here are the steps to complete so that you have access to TD Snap for free. And just to go over and become more familiar with TD Snap, they switched to a subscription-based app that costs $9 per month. It is compatible with all Tobii Dynavox devices as a subscription, as I mentioned, on an iPad. And just some noteworthy features, it is fully customizable. The grid size can be adjusted, and it includes a search tool to help users and communication partners find where a specific word or phrase is located. There are a variety of page set options that you can trial to best match the needs of the AAC learner. There are also a variety of access options, which is an important feature to consider for students with specific physical needs. And depending on the page set you select, there are various language options to choose from, and these can be found on their website. TouchChat is another app that can be made available for free to SLPs through their partner program that I have linked. This process will also take a few weeks, so please keep that in mind if you're planning to trial for an upcoming eval. So just an overview of TouchChat. So TouchChat HD with WordPower is a robust communication app with word-based AAC vocabulary designed to facilitate quick and easy language generation. It includes high-frequency core words color-coded into parts of speech, such as pronouns, verbs, adjectives, etc. As a sentence is being built, you often find that the next word you want to say can be spoken with 1 or 2 button presses. So WordPower combines the features of core vocabulary, spelling, and word prediction. The core words of WordPower are categorized, color-coded, and alphabetized for easy access. So some noteworthy features: buttons can be programmed with links to media and YouTube videos. I have found this helpful when working with clients who are Gestalt language processors. It's available in additional languages such as English, Spanish, French, Canadian French, Mandarin, Hebrew, and Arabic. The pages, grid layouts, buttons, messages, and symbols are fully customizable. And an additional notable feature is that this app supports various access methods to accommodate different physical abilities, such as head tracking, switch, scanning, and touch access. So LAMP is also available for free for SLPs through their partner program. You will need to complete their application and training, but after that, you will receive a code in a few weeks that will allow you to upgrade to the full version. So LAMP Words for Life stands for the Language Acquisition through Motor Planning Approach. It is a robust language system that is appropriate for both beginning communicators and AAC users with advanced language skills. This app is symbol-based, but the symbols are paired with text to support literacy development. The price of the app is $300, and it is an iOS app. The main feature of the LAMP Words for Life app is that every word is produced by one unique and consistent motor pattern. So it prioritizes motor planning. It does include a word finder tool, which is helpful when learning to use the app and find where words are located. There are a variety of voice options, which is important for AAC user personalization. And this app is available in a few different languages, including English, Spanish, and Canadian French. So just a few key takeaways for tonight. There are advantages and disadvantages of each type of AAC. AAC is not one size fits all. So AAC offers powerful tools to support communication, but it's not without challenges. AAC can greatly enhance independence, language development, and social connection. But time, training, and customization is required to be effective. Every individual's needs are unique. What works well for one person may not work well for another. The key is a personalized approach that balances the advantages, like increased communication access, with potential disadvantages, like learning curves or access limitations, always centering the AAC user's strengths and preferences. Number 2, AAC assessment by a qualified team is crucial to successful implementation. SLPs are qualified to perform AAC evaluations, but when possible, especially in the school setting, it's important to get input from other professionals, such as teachers, OTs, PTs, and parents. Each professional brings a different lens to the child's unique needs and strengths. Collaboration between professionals also ensures that AAC goals align with the educational or therapeutic objectives, reinforces skills across settings, and promotes generalization and consistent use. And number 3, advocacy and persistence pays off. Families and professionals should not give up. Knowing your rights and available resources makes a big difference in accessing AAC. Denials are common, but often reversible with appeals and support from device companies and advocacy organizations. So I just want to walk you through some of the resources that I have here. On the left, I have device companies, which offer free online trainings and resources. They can also offer support with dedicated device trials, assist with the evaluation and funding process through insurance. And each of these links will take you to the contact page for each company's AAC consultants. Under websites and free AAC CEUs, the first link will take you to the PRC Saltillo Funding Guide. This is a great resource with everything you need to know about AAC funding. There are templates and samples, information on deferrals and denials, funding forms, and information about borrowing devices. There are also many grants and scholarships available for AAC devices. The second link I have on the right listed here is the Speech Tablets for Apraxia program, which provides iPads and protective cases to children 2.5 to 18 years old with a diagnosis of childhood apraxia of speech. This is only one website out of many that offers devices to families in need. The next bullet point I have is a link to AAC Community, which has a list of free AAC-related CEUs, as well as handouts, evaluation templates, and insurance support. And we have talked tonight about state lending libraries. So I have the link listed for the general website with each state. And then the last bullet point is the lending library contact for New Jersey. It has been such a pleasure giving this series of AAC webinars, but all good things come to an end. So tomorrow will be our final webinar, Augmentative and Alternative Communication Best Practice. Don't forget that these webinars are recorded, so even if you can't make it live, I encourage you to still register and watch at a later date. So thank you so much. Here is my contact information if you would like to reach out after the Q&A about any further questions that you may have.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for all this really wonderful information. Just quickly, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Vanessa Lombardo. I'm the director here at the AT Center at TCNJ. Work very closely with Maddie, who you met in the beginning. And we've really been thrilled to have Sarah with us for all the information that she shared in all the other webinars. And like we said, looking forward to tomorrow as well. So now we want to open it up to questions. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat. We're going to, go through them and hopefully get to as many as we can. So please feel free to do that. Before we get to that, I just want to let everyone know we will be putting a link into our evaluation form into the chat. This is the way that we can find out information from you, get feedback, of course, helping us improve in the future. For future webinars, we're intending to do a bunch over the summer, certainly into the fall, and into next year. And once you fill out that evaluation form, we will be able to send you the certificates of attendance and PD hours through the School of Education through TCNJ. And then also later we'll put a link into the PD hours from ASHA. So if you are an SLP and you need those PD hours, we'll put a link into that as well. So like I said, feel free to go ahead and put any questions in the chat. But Sarah, I had a question to kind of start us off here. This is actually something that just the other day, someone asked me about. You had mentioned in terms of insurance and thinking about the funding. And you had mentioned about, contacting for a family to contact their insurance company, right? Kind of asking to verify the benefits. But one of the questions that we get asked or that I have heard is, when you're having that conversation, is there some specific information, right? Some things that I should specifically ask if I was the family member, or of course, if I'm the SLP that's working with the family. I think sometimes insurance can be a little daunting. And so I was just curious in terms of your experience when working or, coaching in terms of insurance companies, what information should I be asking to verify that information?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I do know some insurances have it listed. If it's not listed under speech generated device, they have it listed under durable medical equipment. Um, so I think referring back to that slide that I have that has like all those different information, that's generally what information you'll need. Again, everyone's insurance is very different. So it can vary. But referring back to that slide that just has like that general information, let me see, let me go back to it. Um, can be just helpful because I don't know about you, but whenever I call insurance, I feel like I have to give them an answer right away. And if I don't have everything available, I get flustered. So
Mhm.
encouraging parents to have that information ready and handy. I also like to call, like if I'm able to be on the call with the parent, because oftentimes they will get lost and not know kind of what to say. So if an SLP is able to be on the call with the parent, or if you can schedule in that time, I think it's helpful. That way the parent's not wasting time, spending time waiting on the call and then only for nothing to get resolved.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of just that approach of working collaboratively, I think is really, really helpful. Because as you said, I think it can be a little tricky to go through that process. So that
Yes.
is really helpful. So thank you for all that information. Um, Thinking about, for a student who maybe had an evaluation that was completed, let's say a while ago, maybe more than a year ago, thinking about, if it's an SLP, maybe this is a new student to them. Maybe they had, an evaluation about a year ago, or the family is, thinking about it. Do they have to have that evaluation updated if it was completed more than a year ago? What information would be helpful in terms of that time frame?
Yeah, so unfortunately, your child will need to have, it's unfortunate, but also fortunate because a lot can happen in a year, and that's a good thing, you know? So, communication skills, cognitive ability, or motor access may have changed significantly in the past year. And many insurers require a recent evaluation, typically within 6 to 12 months, to fund a device or replacement. The requirements can vary depending on the payment source. So, to be on the safe side, I do recommend completing paperwork with an evaluation within 6 months.
Mm. Yeah, and that's a really good point in terms of that amount of time. When you were talking about the set framework and looking at the student and their needs, right? What are their needs at this point? And what has changed, what has improved? And so really, taking all of that into account, I think that makes a lot of sense. Um, You also mentioned trials, right? So thinking about trialing, different types of AAC. But what if the SLP, doesn't have access to multiple forms of AAC to trial? What would be your recommendation if an SLP is in that type of situation?
Yeah, so hopefully after tonight, you have some more examples. You can utilize the resources that I have listed. So TD Snap, TouchChat, and LAMP, they offer those free apps for SLPs. And that's something that I definitely did not know about. And I've actually purchased some of those apps by myself just to have them.
Mhm.
It does require a little bit of time. So let's say you have an eval coming up this week, you're not going to get that free app this week. But on your own time, if you can follow those links and fill out that information, you can get that as a free resource. I always like to have a variety of options like light tech always available and core boards to be using during trials. But definitely know like these companies do offer free resources for SLPs, and I just think we're not aware of it. And honestly, in school, I was never taught that. That's something that I learned after the fact, just like going on their websites and seeing what options were available. Um, and then, so yeah, so that's really it. Just kind of having to prepare ahead and fill out that paperwork, but you can get a couple options to trial for free.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's helpful to reach out to the company because as you said, maybe, it's something that they can help with or because, if you are using it, just for the purposes of the trial, just having that dialogue, might be helpful as well. And going further into a trial, how long, right? If I'm trying out, let's say if it is multiple pieces of equipment or multiple different types of apps, how long should I trial, something for, with my student?
So this one is, I think this is a very intimidating part of the eval process. There's, to my knowledge, there's not any like research that states a specific time frame for trialing AAC. ASHA doesn't prescribe a fixed trial period, but emphasizes the need for individualized evidence-based trials that allow for sufficient time to teach, model, and assess effectiveness across settings and communication partners. ASHA also recommends data collection across activities and environments rather than focusing solely on device use quantity. So again, this is very dependent on the individual student and setting, but I would say at minimum 4 to 6 weeks would be required to allow for meaningful data collection, adjustment, and modeling. And some trials may need to be longer depending on the student's needs or inconsistent opportunities for use. And of course, all of this varies depending on the setting that you're in. So like if you're in the school setting and you're able to, go observe them in the classroom or, go observe them on the playground or like just in the lunchroom. I know in the private practice setting, you basically like they come to your office and that's it. Or so it really does depend on the setting that you're in with the flexibility that you have. But to my knowledge, there's not a specific research that says you have to do this amount of trialing. You really have to use your clinical judgment and work within the parameters of your setting.
Hmm. Yeah, and one of the things you had mentioned at the beginning is thinking about, communication, having this kind of total communication system, but across all different environments. So in terms of a trial, if you're working with a student in school, is it typical that the device would go home with them, would be able to go across environments? And again, I'm sure that varies depending on what you just said, right? The setting, the people, et cetera. But I guess in best practice, is it beneficial to do that when you're doing a trial? What would you say in terms of that?
Yeah, so just like you said, it does very much vary depending on the setting. I have worked in specialized schools where the district was very strict about the device stayed at school and was not able to go home. And then I have also worked in settings where, the parent was able to sign off on a waiver or we were able to sign some paperwork and it was able to go home. So best practice, I would say if you're in a trial period, having it go home and that way you're able to document, oh, mom said that he noticed the device or she took it out and he started babbling on it. So I think that piece would be very beneficial if you're able to send it home, but I understand that during a trial period that's not always possible.
Yeah. Okay, great. This is another question that you did touch on, but I'm wondering if we could dig a little deeper. This is in regard to, you have this trial, but the student really doesn't touch the device, right? Doesn't really interact with the device during this trial period. So how can I take data, what information, would be helpful, during this time?
I love this question. And again, I think this is one that if you're trialing AAC devices, a lot of SLPs get stuck here and they don't know where to go. I think we should normalize that many students won't immediately touch an AAC device, and that's completely okay and doesn't mean that they're not candidates for AAC. I suggest that you document what access and opportunities the student had to the device, document prompts given, the activity or the context, and what communication functions were modeled. Also, don't forget that the engagement piece that I briefly discussed earlier tonight. So even without touching a device, a student might glance at you or at the device while you're modeling. They might change their affect. They might follow a direction or communicate in another way while you're using the device. So these are all forms of data that can and should be collected.
Hmm. Yeah, and thinking about maybe prior to the trial starting, kind of setting some of those expectations or possible scenarios, right? That, these different things, might happen. And like you said, kind of normalizing that just as prior to the trial, you want to be thinking about who's responsible for, maintaining the device, charging the device, right? All those different things. So, so yeah, maybe kind of setting that up prior, that way everyone's on the same page, that they may not actually utilize the device, or maybe not in the very beginning, but those other observable behaviors are giving a lot of good information.
Absolutely.
And then you also talked about, of course, various types of, right, light tech devices, mid tech devices, high tech devices, and this goes back to that evaluation. How do you know which one to choose? How do you know maybe where to start with a student? Because it's very broad, right? The availability, or I should say the possibilities, right, are available. So what would you say in terms of an SLP, thinking about how do I know which one to choose or to start with my student?
Yeah, so this is a very common question, and the answer is that AAC is not one size fits all, as I mentioned previously tonight. Instead, the most appropriate AAC system is one that best meets the individual communication needs, goals, and context for the AAC user. So high tech, mid tech, and light tech, they all have value, but they also all have limitations that we just kind of discussed tonight. Of course, it can be tempting to only want to use high tech because it does provide that robust vocabulary. And oftentimes it's more familiar for communication partners. However, if the AAC user can't access, understand, or meaningfully use this form of AAC across environments, then it's not benefiting the communicator. So I definitely suggest, obviously just trialing all different forms, but not limiting the AAC user, which I tend to see more than the opposite. We still are living in a situation where we have to, prerequisites. A lot of professionals think that a student needs to show X, Y, and Z before they can use a high robust. I touched a little bit about PECS earlier tonight, and why I don't really promote it is because I think some of those light tech tools are being used as, hey, you have to master this before we can move on to high tech. So again, just exposure and modeling is really important to kind of figure out where the student would best fall under which device.
Right. It's almost as if we're putting up some of those limitations and thinking about, like you said, kind of checking off all these boxes for this specific thing, but really kind of flipping that and thinking about a broader exposure, and then, seeing what is the most beneficial to the student.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, great. Obviously, if there are any other questions, I saw, Matt did say, feel free, to raise your hand, or obviously put your questions in the chat. Happy to do that. But I am going to pass it over to Matt for our wrap up tonight. And again, thank you, Sarah, so much.
Of course. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. It was such a great presentation. We're really looking forward to tomorrow's presentation. So please come back. But, I'm going to ask someone to drop our evaluation link in the chat while we do this. My name is Matt Hall. I am one of the co-faculty leads at the TCNJ Assistive Technology Center. So the link that's in the chat, or the link that's coming in the chat, if you could click that link and help us with some evaluation. When it asks you for what event you attended, please answer types of AAC and how to acquire it if you can. We'll need you to complete this survey for us so that we can send you professional development hours, attendance for all of those kinds of things. There's also going to be an opportunity for folks who are SLPs to use this for PDH, professional development hours, which help you toward your certificate maintenance interval. We'll get you some information on that as well. And we'll be posting a recording of tonight's webinar on YouTube in probably next week, so that if you'd like to revisit any of this information, you're welcome to come back to it or share it with folks who might need some access to it. I think I saw some questions come in, actually. Did I see one? I want to pause before we keep going and have that question come up. It looks like the question is, how do you gain buy-in for a student with a device that might be different or new to the classroom? For example, if most students use LAMP or TouchChat, and then a new student comes in with TD Snap, something like that.
So that's such a great question. I'm so happy you asked that. Um, I think it comes down to education. So, people like what's familiar is what people gravitate towards. So, if I had a student come in that had a different program from all the other students, I definitely would set up like a morning meeting or a time to provide some education to the staff on that student's device. And then in that session, kind of provides like show a walkthrough basically so that they feel more comfortable. I also might push into the classroom a little bit more, like that month or over the next few weeks to show the staff how I'm using that device and kind of help them be more comfortable with it. So that would be my suggestion for the buy-in is to, have, I know most school settings have like once a week classroom meeting. So, and if not, I would schedule one to provide that walkthrough and that education to that classroom. That way they don't feel like they're just being thrown to the wolves. And then I would make myself more present in the classroom to kind of help out and facilitate that communication.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to throw up a slide on the screen for you all to see. Hopefully you can see this slide about our TCNJ Center. If you are interested or you know people who might be interested in further support on any of the topics that were in the webinar tonight or other topics related to assistive technology, please reach out to us at the atcenter@tcnj.edu. If you're in the state of New Jersey, we can offer you free professional development and support, and we would really love to do that. So, and I think Sarah mentioned our website earlier today, which is also on the slide here. We would love to be in touch with you, have more information from you. So if you haven't had a chance, please stick around to fill out that evaluation form for us. And if you are ready to go, then we hope we'll see you tomorrow at the next webinar. Have a great night, folks. Really appreciate you being here.